still tuned into the Power Station Energy 100. This is Econo Chat. Let's talk business with Mr. Daniel Steinman. We are talking about purchase power parity, and we've touched on how it affects the consumer, but also the price elasticity, comparing Namibia with South Africa, but also comparing Namibia with Europe in terms of your currency value or power of your currency. But now we will be looking at the GDP per capita.
Elsie, you used a very good word. I have to felicitate you on that one, and please tell the readers, don't switch off their radios when I use big words.
I'm sure they won't, because they want to know what it means.
To felicitate somebody simply means to congratulate him. And you and I know that because we work in language.
Yes.
But it's good for our readers also to know
understand.
Stuff like that. So if you look at GDP per capita, it's perhaps or arguably one of the most misleading statistics in the world. I would go so far as to say that it is a fairly useless statistics. It gives you a comparison between the size of third world economies and developed economies or first world economies, which is a nominal comparison. And let's take GDP per capita in practical terms. The last figures that I saw, the GDP per capita in Namibia is about $8,000, and it is slightly, this is per annum, so that translates to about 160,000 rand in a year. Now that is not a lot, but that's a per capita. That is the average for every person. That includes the richest and the poorest. So there are thousands of people in Namibia who would be only too glad to earn 160,000 Namibia dollar in a year. But there are a smaller percentage, and I would estimate in the region of 25% or less, so a quarter of the population, that will not be able to live on 160,000 a year. Their expenditure side of their household economy is, there's this big word again, structured. Their house costs them so much per month. Their car costs them so much per month. The education of their children costs them so much per month. So they cannot escape that structure. Now we get to GDP per capita, and remember what I said about price elasticity. We've got huge room to maneuver in terms of pricing in Namibia. You can still find a bargain, and you can still say no to something when it's too expensive for you. You don't have that same price elasticity in Europe or in America. In America to a certain extent, but definitely not in Europe. It's very rigid. If something is €1, it's €1. If you don't have €1, you don't get it. So the GDP per capita statistics do not include or incorporate that natural elasticity that you find in a developing economy. It is a rigid figure. It's a nominal comparison, and it's an unfair comparison. Because it makes us look like we're always begging from the rest of the world. We only earn 160,000 Namibia dollar in a year, depending on which side of the river you stay. It may be sufficient, it may be a good income, it may not be sufficient, it may be a poor income for you. But you can move around if you want to. You can live more expensive, or you can live cheaper, which you cannot do in Europe. If you are in a certain segment, there's a certain set cost of living in that area or in that segment of the population. You don't have that thing. So what I'm cautioning the readers or the listeners is to be very discerning when they read an article or a book where GDP per capita is used as a base reference, because it is not it is not a reliable indicator of the existential ability of a population. I almost want to say on grassroots level. You know, and again, it's a practical reality of life in Africa. You know, you have to be very flexible if you want to survive. Even if you've got a good income, you're not always guaranteed that good income will continue.
Of course.
And if you've got a good income for 10 years or 15 years and you then without a good income, your pension will definitely not be adequate when you reach 65. But again, we can come by with a much lower GDP per capita than what's possible in Europe or in the States or even in parts of Asia. You know, where it's what you need to understand, it is basically a comparison between a developed world and a developing world. And the developed world is structured. There's that GDP per capita statistics captures you. The developing world, which includes us, is highly unstructured. You can basically suck any GDP per capita stat out of your thumb if you want to. It's meaningless. Because it doesn't reflect that natural tendency that we have to be able to survive, to be flexible. It obscures that flexibility that is part and parcel of a developing economy. So when you hear GDP per capita this or GDP per capita that, and you see that our GDP per capita in Namibia is actually, I think, about $600 higher than in South Africa. You know that we have a
higher than South Africa.
Then immediately you must realize all that it tells you is that the inequality in Namibia is higher than in South Africa. Nothing else.
That's what we have for you today on Econochat. Let's talk business with Mr. Daniel Steinman. You can, of course, catch us again next week. Thank you so much for keeping it locked to the power station, Energy 100. From me, Elsie Minyani. Goodbye.